Okay, today is the overview for the Life Master Course, Session 3, Protecting Your Assets. And I'm going to jump right into it using the Freedom platform. So let me find screen share here. Here we go. So many buttons, so little time. Okay, this is the Freedom platform. The way I start my day from a habit standpoint is I look at my dashboard. I'm picking what priority task am I going to do, maybe 1, 2, or 3 priorities at the most, because there's only so many things I'm going to accomplish in any one day. Then periodically I'll look at my life flight plan. This is a heat map, red, green, yellow, to see what's hot, what's cold, maybe resort what's my priority right now. I don't do this every day, but I do this at least every 3 months, maybe every 1 or 2 months as I think about going into the next month. And today we're going to focus on, protecting what you have, risk. And there's things that we know about. This is kind of the short list. People think about insurance, maybe you think about cybersecurity, divorce, estate planning, those kinds of things. Definitely power of attorney, medical directives. The things that people don't often think about is asset protection from a legal standpoint, and then household accounting. If there's lots of things going on, how do you gain visibility? So I'm going to spend a few extra minutes on topic A and topic B, just so that you have options. Okay, so for asset protection, it took me years to kind of figure out what I want to do and what firm I want to do it with, where I get the outcomes I want at a price point that really works. I'm a growth CFO, so I care about the price point plus the outcomes. So asset protection is something like this. If we go back to the first story in the orientation about the logistics company doing $13 million a year revenue, good household income, the business really doing quite well. The risk is that in the operating business, they had all their trucks, all their customers, all their employees, all their equipment, and the real estate, the warehouse and office space they operated out of. So just imagine, it's not, at some point, something's going to happen in a logistics company. A truck has an accident, it hits a school bus, something that's going to cause a lot of risk, a lot of uncertainty. And if you have insurance, sometimes you find out I'm underinsured, and with insurance, you never quite know what they're going to cover. The first action lots of times is to deny a claim. So insurance gives some peace of mind, but not complete peace of mind. So imagine just doing things differently. Imagine same company, but everything is separated. You have the operating company that owns the customers and employees. You don't own the employees, but employees work for the company. That's doing all the cash flow. Separate from that, you have a company that owns the equipment, right? Company number 2 over here, right? So if something happens to company number 1, you still own the equipment, right? It's not impaired or contingent liability or anything like that. And then company number 3 owns all your vehicles, right? Or this, not your vehicles, but the story in this case, all the vehicles are separate. So something happens, company 1 or 2 or 3, or 1 or 2, company 3 is not impacted. You still own the vehicles. You still have assets. You still can recover much easier. Even more importantly, when something happens in the first company, the operating company, you know that your assets are separate. So a little more peace of mind, right? A little more comfort. Insurance is a little bit clearer about what it's going to cover. And then the third thing, if the company owns real estate, warehouse, office space, whatever it is, you can do a lease arrangement with any of your real estate properties. So this is the basic structure. This is, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm doing peer-to-peer experience share here. But the basic setup to avoid a catastrophe is the living trust governs everything. Then you have your operating company set up something like this. You could have your own, your corporation where you run your compensation through so you can get additional tax strategy advantages. Is an option worth knowing about. You separate your operating companies based on their assets so that all the eggs are not in one basket, and then set up real estate under a holding company, right? And these are all disregarded entities, so it's pretty easy to do from a tax compliance standpoint. And the last key category is safe assets. It could be, investments in 401ks, public investments, Bitcoin, who knows. You set up a holding company for those things, and vehicles, things that are relatively low risk. You put those assets in that column, that stack. So the beautiful thing about asset protections is that when you have it set up, you have legal firewalls where liability is contained in one area. For example, if you have a real estate property and something that happens with a tenant, it's contained to that property. It's not spilling over to everything else. And the second thing with the asset protection, you have privacy, where the opposing lawyer wants to do a search to see what you have, to see if you have deep pockets to take something. You can, they won't see much, right? They might see the house you live in, which has protection in most states and that kind of stuff. So the appetite for someone to go after you changes based on how much privacy you have. And there's even ways of creating a company, put a lien against the first company where if they look at your operating company, it looks like there's $1 million line of credit lien on it. So then, the thinking is going to be different at that point. Either way, especially if you're a business owner, you probably start to have something that's worth protecting. And if so, this structure is at least worth learning about as an option. And from an inheritance, next generation standpoint, pretty easy to transfer these stacks through your living trust or whatever vehicle you have to that next generation. So that's a little bit about asset protection. If you want to know the company I chose to work with, just message me and I'll introduce you to them. Okay, so that's thing one that might be new for protecting what you have. Thing two is accounting. Just like in your business, if your household is of a certain size, you kind of know line of sight what's going on. You can monitor financial activity with the bank accounts. If there's money, you can do something. If there's not money, you don't. Pretty manageable. Even like a small business, you can kind of run it off the bank account. Just fly the plane that way. Once things start to get to be a certain size, maybe there's multiple properties, there's multiple operating businesses, who knows, multiple people in your household, husband, wife, that kind of thing. There starts to be a higher level of value of doing household accounting, and then you can see for every activity what's generating income, where is the money going to for each activity, like for each real estate property as an example, and start making better decisions, right? And that's you got the money coming in, money going out, plus you got the balance sheet, so you can see your net worth. It's just just much easier to make a decision. Before I had that for myself, it was very hard. I was just running all my activities based on the bank account. I definitely lost some tax strategy opportunities. I couldn't quite see what's going on, and wasn't making the best decisions, right? The minute I did household accounting, I can carve out more money for investments every week, right? So dollar cost averaging every week. So something that most people don't do, most business owners don't do, is that household accounting, worth thinking about. It's just the same in your business. If you have good accounting, you got much more visibility versus if you don't. So same kind of concept. So with that, let's go back to the visual here. Your life flight plan, your vivid vision, your destination, the bucket list, financial resources, and doing it on a foundation where it's risk protected. So if something happens in one area, it's not going to spill over to other areas, and doing it in a way where you have visibility. You can see, you can see what you have. Make decisions like that. So I hope this video helps at least create some options, some thoughts that could be useful to you. Let me know. Let me know what's useful. Let me know what else we could be thinking about. So with that, thank you for your time and attention.